The American War of Independence was an 8-year-long war after which the 13 American colonies won their independence from Britain and went on to establish the United States of America. To give some context, we would have to go back to the 7 Years' War, as the cost of British victory against France left the British government deeply in debt. From their founding in the 1600s, the American colonies were largely left to govern themselves. Attempts by the British to raise revenue by taxing the colonies were met with heated protest among colonists, who resented their lack of representation in the British Parliament and demanded the same rights as other British subjects. Colonial resistance led to violence in 1770 when British soldiers opened fire, killing 5 men during the Boston Massacre. 3 years later, Bostonians boarded British ships and dumped their tea cargoes into Boston Harbor as an act of protest against British taxes known as the Boston Tea Party. The outraged British Parliament passed a series of punitive measures designed to reassert authority in Massachusetts. In response, a group of colonial delegates, including Washington, John, and Samuel Adams, met in Philadelphia to denounce taxation without representation, as well as the maintenance of the British Army in the colonies without their consent, but did not go so far as to demand independence. In April 1775, local militiamen clashed with British soldiers in Massachusetts, marking the start of the Revolutionary War. The Second Continental Congress, including new additions Benjamin Franklin and Jefferson, convened in Philadelphia and appointed Washington to create a Continental Army and oversee the capture of Boston. American enthusiasm gradually waned due to the dangers of the war, and colonies were compelled to entice soldiers who were mostly unexperienced, young, and poor men with offers of cash and land bounties. A key point of the American Revolution was the Congress' decision to transform the Continental Army into a standing army of soldiers doing long-term service rather than one-year enlistments and volunteering. Also, beginning in 1778, the Continental Army enlisted African Americans, a practice that Congress had initially forbidden. Although the Revolution's first major battle ended in British victory, it lent considerable encouragement to the revolutionary cause, as the less trained American forces inflicted heavy casualties on the British at the Battle of Bunker Hill. By 1776, a growing majority of Americans had come to favor independence, and on July 4th, the Continental Congress voted to adopt the Declaration of Independence, drafted by a 5-man committee including Franklin and John Adams and written mainly by Jefferson. Thomas Paine's pamphlet Common Sense, which was widely reprinted, significantly boosted public support for independence. The same month, the British government sent a large fleet along with 34,000 troops to New York, from which Washington was forced to retreat. Pushed across the Delaware River, Washington fought back with a surprise attack in Trenton and won another victory at Princeton to revive the rebels' hopes. One of the key moments during the American Revolution was the American victory under General Gates at the Battle of Saratoga, prompting France to enter the war openly on the American side. The American Revolution had become a world war as France and then Spain joined the colonies against Britain, to which they had bitterly lost territory at the conclusion of the 7 Years' War. Following Philadelphia's capture by the British Army, the American troops retreated and greatly benefited from training and discipline provided by the French. After failing to crush the rebellion in New England, the British turned their attention to the South and initially achieved multiple spectacular victories. In 1781, however, a joint Franco-American land and sea campaign forced the British to surrender in Yorktown, Virginia, as a French fleet prevented British reinforcement or evacuation. The Siege of Yorktown practically marked the end of the American Revolution, and 2 years later, Britain recognized the United States of America at the Treaty of Paris, making it the first nation to achieve independence from the British colonial empire. Washington would become the first American president, and 30 years later, Britain would enter into a new conflict with the US known as the War of 1812. Besides eliminating the formal nobility and recognizing the equal inheritance rights of daughters and widows, the American Revolution brought some radical changes at the time, such as replacing the imperial monarchy with an elected government system that didn't have a king. On the flip side, slaves, who represented up to 30% of the American population, were held as property and were not considered equal to whites. Furthermore, women couldn't vote, and neither could white men who did not have enough property.